Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Very happy to see a good number of friendly faces around. So my name is Camilo Rojas. I'm the founder and CEO of ProjectUs.ai. So I think I'm going to begin. I was debating a lot on how to best begin this talk, and I'm the kind of person that usually goes for the very optimist message. And I'm also the kind of person that, you know, whenever I notice that people were gloomy about the state of the world, I'll tell them, no, but look, the number of conflicts have been steadily declining. Like, this is the best time that humanity has ever lived. And truth be told, lately it doesn't seem to be that way, right? And I thought that humanity is living this unprecedented moment where you keep seeing conflicts in many different spheres of our lives. And, and AI, we can see it as something that brings a unique opportunity to do something about it. So I thought about starting with that reflection that, unfortunately, these graphs that show the number of people in the world involved in an armed conflict is steadily coming down in the last 200 years or so. It's going up. And if you check the news every day, doesn't put us in the best, let's say, mood or mental state, and with good reasons. So in the past 5 years, conflict levels have nearly doubled. So there is this conflict tracking system that has been showing that the ACLED has been showing that 50 countries are going through unprecedented levels of violence and conflict. 1 in 8 people have been exposed to be, have been estimated to be exposed to conflict during the last year. And the thing is that conflict doesn't end in war, right? I think that since the last election, if I get a dime for every person that tells me that the other half of the country is an idiot, and this tell us a story about conflict that seems global, and then we feel it in our communities, in political parties, in our different countries, and it goes beyond, right? It goes to the boardrooms, it goes to our workplaces, and for example, 85% of people have been declared being annoyed by coworkers, and I think that everyone probably relates with the meme or had a moment where you might relate with the meme. And 2024 brought a reported drop in workplace civility, right? And this is not just people not in the right mood. This means HR interventions. This means productivity issues. This means just everyone not being able to bring their best self to work. And then it goes into our houses. So 30% of married people fight weekly, and 20 to 30% admit to being unhappy with their spouses. So, and this begs the question, why is that happening? Why does these conflicts appear to mushroom and multiply? And if you look a little bit into the literature, you'll see a number of common causes, right? There's, of course, the stress, the lack of trust, this syndrome of, let's say, not being very trustful of the other. Of course, confirmation bias, the polarization of the political spectrum, self-perception errors. There's also this just very honest difficulty of solving our conflicts in a rational way that I think is just kind of part of what makes us human. And there's also emotional escalation. So if you take these situations, right, there is a disagreement. It's just very easy to fall in this pattern where just the conflict spirals out of control, right? It begins with a small disagreement, and it just self-amplifies and becomes bigger and bigger, and social networks are doing that way worse than it could be. So when I began at MIT in 2019, all the credit goes to my wife. We were having this conversation at the dinner table, and we're thinking like, why, back then AI was already quite decent when it comes to, or let's say quite good, like the algorithms, when it comes to detecting human behaviors or detecting emotions. And it was being used extensively, for example, by Facebook to try to sell us stuff. And the question was, what if instead of using these algorithms to let the company take decisions for ourselves, why don't we use it sort of as a Google Translate for emotions and behaviors, as a way of giving self-awareness and visibility of how do you come across, what's the impact that you are having on others, right? It's a conference. I'm sure you met a lot of new people around here. We go a little bit in autopilot when we start connecting or having a conversation. It's actually very difficult to reflect on how am I coming across and what is the impact that I'm having on the other person. That's just not how our brain was designed. It really takes the extra step. And that was the provocative question. What if we could build that mirror? So we started developing ProjectUs.ai, basically as an AI system that could help us better manage conflicts and, well, bridge the divides. So we started working on, let's say, back then in 2019, on the concept. We thought, well, we need a system that is going to be able to measure and monitor a wealth of biosignals. Let's say, all the ones that could carry some information about our emotions: body language, tone of voice, choice of words, behavioral patterns. And we can use our AI algorithms to start detecting the early signs of conflict and try to nudge people in different directions after that. So the thesis was, if we can use this to trigger individual change, we could then multiply it across teams, organizations, and countries. So I gotta say, we began with many good intentions, but we thought, well, how do we actually begin this? Right? You put the good intentions in a piece of paper, on a proposal. We made it to the first day at the lab. Like, how do we actually take the first step? It really took a lot of knocking doors, figure out who was working on empathy. And we found this couple of sort of crazy clinical psychologists that had already been experimenting on bringing technology to couples therapy. So we took the first step with them, and we started experimenting with couples. So basically, we built this device back then that could track your tone of voice and a good number of audio cues, that could measure also your electrodermal activity. And the idea is, if I tell you something that, something truly horrible, truly harsh, that it triggers a strong emotional reaction in you, my bracelet is going to vibrate. So it's going to let me know I did something that triggers something in you. And we built a lab. We built a study room where we'll bring couples. We'll make them fight. And we would study how this AI-mediated feedback could help them navigate the conversation towards a better outcome. So I know the question you'll have: how do you make them fight? So it's a comment that we get. Word to share about that. So when they came into the room, we will ask them, each of them, to write in a piece of paper 3 areas of concern that they had in the last 2 weeks with respect to the partner or the relationship. And then we would choose the ones that didn't match, and we'll ask them to talk about that. So the ones that match were the ones that were, they probably discussed about it already, they achieved a resolution, they had some sort of a pre-agreement. The ones that didn't match were the ones that were brewing in the back of their heads, or like just ready to explode. So that was our way of eliciting real emotions. And we tracked everything that we could, from the body temperature, the facial expressions, the tone of voice, everything, trying to find what were the different signals or the different components that could let us to understand the effect that AI was having in the conversation. So what we learned, this was our first paper in the space. First of all, the feedback, or giving a little bit of awareness about emotions and behaviors, trigger reflection and trigger action. So it nudged people to reflect about, what did I do that caused this in my partner? So we started measuring how the semantic patterns of the conversation change. So we started seeing that people started asking more questions than when they were getting feedback. People started using more words that were associated with a perception, like feel, see, hear. And even the way that we're phrasing, we saw more collective nouns, like we and us, as opposed to me and I. And a significant increase as well of social words. So, and this is, can be summed up in some of the phrases that we heard from the people. It was like quite simple. The feedback was a check-in reminder to reflect on the effects that I had on my partner. And at that point, we thought, well, this is amazing. We need to scale this up. So it was also the pandemic, so we could not do experiments in the lab anymore. So we decided to transition everything to the virtual space. So we built a web interface that, again, could analyze your tone of voice, your choice of words, behavioral patterns, body language. Again, it could give you a similar type of feedback. And we started experimenting with complete strangers. And what we did was to pick people that were in opposite spectrums of the political divide, right? Or when it comes to very polarizing questions. And we asked them, we repeated the experiment, and we'll ask them if they could, for example, discuss about whether abortion should be legal, or should euthanasia be legal, or affirmative action. So again, that immediately sparked conflict. And what was very interesting is that we were able to reproduce the results with couples. So again, when you give a little bit of feedback to people about emotions and behaviors that they are conveying and they're triggering, it brings empathetic behaviors. So what did we see? First of all, better conversations. Like, people would share that they simply were more aware of how they were feeling, how their peer was feeling, and they were bringing proactively actions that were aimed at taking the conversation towards a better point. We were able to measure also more perceptual words, more collective nouns, like, again, we and us as opposed to me and I, and real-time adaptations. So people would modify their tone of voice, people would modify their language, people would modify their pace, and even the facial expressions, trying to make their peer feel more comfortable. And again, what we noticed when we started interviewing the participants is that basically the system was helping them or making them aware that they should think more before their next response. So once we got these results, we thought it was ready for the real world and kind of freeing this in the wild. So we started working with managers and teams. So in all honesty, people actually started telling us, hey, my manager should be using this. So we deployed in the workplace. And we started actually working and co-designing with coaches to use this technology to supporting workplace issues. So, for example, I'm anonymizing one of our users, So Mark was one of our early adopters, vice president in an ed tech company. He's supervising a team of 6. They're mostly remote. And in the first month, now it's been 2 years, but say in the first month, he used ProjectUs to get feedback about himself. So what Mark was able to see is that after that month, he was able to to bring a 32% increase in the behaviors that he was trying to build. So Mark in particular was focusing on personal and professional self-awareness, collaboration and delegation, effective communication and feedback, and handling stressful or complex situations. So, each branch is a behavior, each dot is an instance of the behavior, and Mark was able to see that basically the count of behaviors was improving. These behaviors that he was trying to build became more and more frequent. So when you multiply these across an organization, we could see that, for example, in a multinational edtech, we were able to double the decision-making moments. We were able to significantly reduce those pressure points when people were rushing to take decisions, and we're able to bring a significant rise in inclusivity and encouragement in the workplace. And these are numbers, but maybe what truly matters are the voices of the people that have been using the system. So Julie, she has been one of our early adopters, Chief of Client Development at Correntus. She has been using the system for roughly a year and a half. And her biggest take is really how it's helping her to be much more open to give and to receive feedback. In the case of Lynn Cherry, she was basically our first client ever. And she brought it to her company to help people communicate more effectively and incorporate empathy and inclusivity in their day-to-day. And Tosca is quite an interesting case because she went through like a really hard personal time, and she started using the system as a way of tracking her stress, as a way of tracking how events in her personal life would be associated with let's say, the way that she worked. And so what makes our work unique? So first of all, we bring a cool mix of individual and relational behavioral science. So we have focused a lot on delivering the feedback in the right moments, in the right way. And we created these human loops, kind of this human-in-the-loop AI that can drive behavioral change and can measure it. We designed the system in a way that is purposely for self-growth, so the user is the owner of the data, and it's fully private and with the intention of helping them be a better self. We created this digital tool and AI algorithms. So we created our own algorithms and our own data sets to turbocharge learning. And the platform is just widely accessible and compatible with any hardware or any software. So something very important is that we keep AI for good as a pillar of our operations. So we were thrilled that the United Nations contacted us to be part of their AI for good efforts. And we have been working with NVIDIA, with South by Southwest, and with the National Science Foundation as we continue bringing this technology to the world. So just want to thank you for your attention. We're looking for partners that are interested on bringing these to their workplaces, to the world, to their operations. If anything of this resonates, just send me an email or we can chat. There is a QR. It's going to lead you to our website. So there is a waitlist button. So feel free to register yourselves. And yeah, we'll make sure to follow up. So thank you again.